This is the Lee Enoch Show, America's most controversial podcast, coming to you live from UNT with,
Brock Bergen.
and I'm Lee Enochs. This is a bittersweet day in the life of this show, Brock, because one, it's the end of the semester, and two, this might be one of my last podcasts I ever do for KNT Radio. I want to thank you, Brock, for being on the radio show for 4 semesters, Brock. You and I've been
Right.
doing this. But we're going to jump right into you guys. But first of all, I just want to say it's been a blessing, Brock. Thank you for all your help. For all intents and purposes, Brock's been like the intern of the show. Every week, he gets this camera that we in this little thing right here. So at one point, we just used to do audio, and then at some point, I think in our first semester, we wanted to do video, right, Brock? So
Right.
pretty much every week, Brock has faithfully went over there and checked it out and checked it in, and appreciate that, Brock. Before we get into Brock's going to be leading tonight. I believe in Brock's skills and gifts, so he's going to be leading the discussion tonight. But we can't do a show without talking about the main news event of the week, and that's been the attack on Israel. This past weekend, Iran launched something like 300 missiles and drones, Brock, against Israel. Israel's technology is so advanced that they were able to intercept 99% of all the missiles. They're completely impotent in their attack on Israel. That's how powerful Israel's skills are at intercept. They have this Iron Dome system. They destroyed all those drones and missiles. Really sad situation that we got to report. And with that, Brock, we're going to talk about the tragedy of O.J. Simpson. Brock, as a young African American man, what are your feelings, Brock? And as a sport, even more than that, just as a person that loves sports, what's your whole take on the OJ thing, Brock?
I mean, just reading all the what was going on, even the '90s, all that stuff's like insane to read. That whole I was reading some about like the reaction of different people around the country when they ruled him innocent or whatever. It was like a huge contrast to people that were shocked, people that were excited. It was like a lot of that. It caused a lot of division back then. I mean, people still talk about it now more so. Mainly people on Twitter talk about it a lot. I mean, it's just nuts. That's just crazy.
So, Brock's really into sports statistics. So we talked about this, Brock. We're talking about the Heisman Trophy winner. What other things about OJ that stand out as statistics of the Buffalo Bill? Even before that, when he's at USC, right?
Right,
So he won the Heisman, 1968 Heisman.
right.
And what other things did he do, Brock, as an NFL player?
In the NFL, he had an average of at least pretty sure in his best season he had an average of 140 yards per game. And his main stat line most people point to is the stat line of having consecutive seasons of, let me look at it again. It was
1,500 yards, right?
1,500 yards, right?
4 years of 1,500 yards. Only player in league history to rush for 2,000 yards
Right.
in a 14-game season. One game he rushed for 275 yards in one
Right.
game. Just a phenomenal player. The thing about OJ, if you watch old clips about the guy was really tall,
He was a tall guy. He was
very
very
powerful runner,
tall,
fast,
very athletic too.
super athletic guy. I would say the closest thing to OJ Simpson is probably Derrick Henry today, because Derrick Henry's a big guy, right?
Right. He's one of the tallest running backs in the NFL.
Who was that real tall running back for the Giants? Was it Jacobs?
That would be Brandon Jacobs.
Brandon
Right.
Jacobs. He was like 6'5", I think.
Right.
Man, a 6'5" guy coming at you. I don't think OJ he was that tall, but he was definitely over 6 feet, and he was a
Right.
fast guy. Now, the thing that Brock doesn't really know about, because this is before his time, was that after OJ retired. Actually, his last couple of years, he was played for San Francisco 49ers. And he parlayed that into a massive Hollywood career.
Right.
He was on Monday Night Football. He was on the Airplane movies, Naked Gun with Leslie Nielsen. There was this famous commercial that we did when I was growing up as a kid. The thing that we knew about O.J. Simpson, he was on these Hertz rent-a-car commercials. And this is before 9/11, so he would run real fast to get to his destination, but he'd run past security and stuff. Now you're not going to do that now, but
Obviously
OJ,
not.
there was this one commercial where he makes this crazy run in the airport to get to the airplane that was getting ready to take off on time. It was just so fast. And like I said, he was on Monday Night Football. So Brock, you know, we have never been about racism or even talking about that much on our show, but we can't have a discussion about OJ Simpson outside discussion the issue of race because a lot of people felt that OJ was being discriminated because he was African American. But the evidence seems pretty clear that he killed those two people. I don't know what you think about all that.
I mean, obviously, I was not. It was long before I was born. So, but from reading about it, it's pretty nuts to like see. It's like that whole trial must have been insane in real time back in the '90s when that happened.
Well, as a person that lived through all that, and I remember because I lived in Southern California at the time, and I remember when he was in that Ford Bronco going down the highway, that was right by where I lived.
Really,
And yeah, so the helicopters that were, and the planes or whatever that were like over top, recording it, I saw them outside. I would step outside where I was living at, and I saw the same helicopters that were above OJ Simpson's Ford Bronco. So
really,
that's how close I was to the situation.
that's nuts.
I mean, I lived in Southern California. Brock, it's kind of hard to explain. The whole world stopped. It was OJ Simpson. I don't know. The best equivalent to it right now would be like if something newsworthy happened to LeBron James.
Wow.
But the thing about it was, I'm going to make this argument that OJ Simpson was just as good a football player as LeBron James is a basketball player today, at least in his peak. Now, the thing difference about LeBron James is that he's just done it his whole career. He's done it for
Right.
so when OJ first came into the NFL, he had a few years there where he wasn't really productive, maybe wasn't trusted, as a rookie. And then when he closed out his career, but his foundational, maybe like, you know, 5 or 7 years that he was very productive in the NFL of like an 11-year career. He was just as good as any athlete that's ever been, like, 2,000 yards.
Right.
So he won the Heisman and he won the NFL MVP. So with that background, but there's more. Because OJ parlayed it into this national icon, being on TV all the time, movies, he was a much more famous celebrity because he was so recognizable. And he was such a likable guy. He came across as such a friendly person, beautiful wife, just had everything going for himself. And then it goes down. The two murders go down. And I took a class here at UNT, like a kind of a statistics based class. And the professor said that there was a 1 out of 29 million chance that OJ didn't do those crimes. Pretty severe. Pretty severe, my friend. So just the whole issue was just a tragedy. So obviously OJ Simpson died last week. It's just the thing for me, Brock, is why would a guy, I mean, he had everything going for himself. With just jealousy, I don't really fully grasp why he killed those people. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you ever think about that?
I have. It's like that happens with like a ton of like just like a lot of like athletes. It's mainly with athletes, more like there's like controversial things that go on with them during their careers. It's like you sometimes kind of wonder why did they do that? Why did they do this? Why were they on the road doing this? Why were they trying or not trying to do something like that? You just gotta wonder that sometimes. It's
So Brock, you got a lot of material tonight. I want to get into that. So we had this thing that went down with Kansas City Chief wide receiver was going 119 miles an hour, and he's with, I guess he racing
he was
SMU player.
it was what Rashay Rice was doing. He was
Mhm.
it's a weird tradition that people in the Dallas Fort Worth area have. A lot of people do this mainly in the downtown areas of both cities. It's like at like midnight or whatever, they start speed racing one another on like freeways and all that. I obviously would never participate in something like that. That's just like it's unsafe. It's not exactly ideal, but he did it anyway and he turned himself in for it. So
So wasn't there a couple of years ago, and he didn't he hit some people though?
pretty sure he did.
Oh yeah, he injured him. There's a $10 million lawsuit already
Right.
against him. So who was that player a few years ago that did the same thing? He's going to prison.
That was Henry Ruggs from the
He's out of the
Rams.
league, never to
He
play
is
again.
out of the league. He as what he did, he was like turbo speeding on the freeway. Like he was going like 90 in like a 50 mile zone or whatever it was. He
I thought at
killed
one point what reached almost 140 miles an hour.
it was something like that, I believe. He like killed like a
A
lady and her
lady.
dog, and he has since been put in prison. He is not going to play in the NFL again.
So do you think this guy for Kansas City Chiefs, what's his name? Reese?
Rashay Rice.
Rashad Rice. Will he play again in the NFL? Probably not, huh?
I don't think so. I mean, stuff like that, like obviously the NFL, after seeing the Henry Ruggs incident 3 years ago, they're going to want to crack down on something like that. And then by doing that, you're going to have to face the consequences,
So do you remember the Ray Rice thing?
right? The whole elevator incident.
Horrible situation.
Yep.
So what do you got tonight, Brock?
So we've got a lot to cover tonight going on in the sports world. I mean, we've got the NBA and NHL playoffs starting this weekend. We've got the NFL draft next Thursday, next Friday, next Saturday, and all that. We have the MLB season beginning last week, and we got the NCAA tournament obviously wrapping up last week, and then we have the WNBA draft going on last night. So we'll start off with the NBA and NHL playoffs. So right now we've got lots of good matchups for the NBA right now. We've got the Timberwolves and the Suns in round one, the Mavs facing the Clippers. We got the let me look at the rest of the matchups because there's a lot going on.
Hey, Brock, while you look that up, let me ask you a question. So Oklahoma City Thunder
Right.
exceeded all expectations.
Very much. They cruised to the best record in the Western Conference and they just went bonkers on the rest of the league all season. They have one of the youngest teams in the NBA, a lot of draft picks, but they destroyed every single expectation put on them, and now they're the one seed in the West.
That's almost unimaginable.
Right.
Better than the Denver Nuggets.
Right. They finished ahead of the Nuggets. They finished ahead of like a lot of teams right there. It's
So, so Brock, as a young person that follows the NBA, what is it about the Kansas City? They have a bunch of young players. They had that guy Josh Giddey. I'm glad he didn't get more in trouble than they had a lot of adversity during the season, but they got named their starting lineup, Brock.
honestly, with their lineup right now, they have a starting five of let me look.
Yeah, that one guy that averages 30 points a game, right?
Right. They have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, they have Chet Holmgren, he's a good center. They have let's see. Obviously, sorry. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, both Williams brothers. They have
Josh
Chet
Giddey.
Holmgren, Josh Giddey is also one of them. They have they actually have like from what people would think, like from what the outside fan would think, that lineup is really just like nothing really too special on paper. But outside of that, they've just exceeded all expectations.
Well, they got that 30-point score you just mentioned.
Right. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, he's in MVP talks.
And what about Chet Holmgren is a real deal, huh? As a rookie?
Right. This is technically his rookie year because and he got drafted in 2022, but he was injured and missed the entire season. So this is technically his rookie year.
He's only 21 because did he play 1 year in college basketball?
Right, with Gonzaga.
And then he got hurt. So he's what, 20 years old, 21 years old?
Right.
So that guy, do you think that he was a key factor for them to go from 40 win? This is what I know. Oklahoma City Thunder go from winning 24 games 2 years ago
Right.
to last year they won 40 games.
Right.
They weren't even 500 team.
Right. They finished 40 and 42 last season.
And
And
then
now this
they won
year,
57 games,
57 and
Brock.
25, first in the Western Conference, first in the Northwest Division. They were very good this season. That kind of turnaround is just something you just don't really see that often, like in a league like the NBA. Like normally you'd see that in like the NFL, the MLB, maybe even the NHL, but the NBA it's pretty much unheard of. But here we are now with Thunder 57 and 25. Just what a turnaround for them.
Can Brock, in your estimation, can the team that I want to see go all the way? I don't think it's going to happen. You're never going to really hear it, folks, until tonight. Me agreeing with Stephen A. Smith on something. But I want to see the New York Knicks go all the way to the finals.
I want to see them go to the finals in the East. Their fans deserve it. They've had a really good team this year. I've caught a few of their games on like TV, and they play like some of the best physical ball in the NBA. Their defense is really good. They have Jalen Brunson on offense. They have a really solid offense too, and that's just like that team is going to give a lot of teams nightmares in the playoffs.
Can the New York Knicks beat the Boston Celtics? Or not are they not really ready for that?
They absolutely can.
Really?
You heard it here
Wow.
first. They
Hear that
absolutely
tonight.
can.
This is Lee Enochs show. It's a very controversial show. We talk about different issues. But Brock is making a bold statement tonight in the last show of the year. He's saying that the New York Knicks could potentially knock out the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Not
And I'm
just putting
standing.
them to the limit. You're saying they can actually beat them.
They can beat that team
without Julius Randle.
right.
He's out for the season.
Right. I mean, the Knicks have done really well even without Randall. I mean, with Randall he's had a really good turnaround season this year before he got hurt.
Wasn't he pretty good for all these years, or was he kind of struggling?
He was kind of inconsistent. I mean, in his first few years in New York, he wasn't really that good. I mean, 2020, 2021, he was pretty solid. Season after that, it wasn't really too good. But even then, he's constantly been the next most underrated player for the past 2 seasons, I would say.
So there's no chance that he's coming back.
Right. It's not looking likely he's going to be back for the playoffs.
So Jalen Brunson, Villanova. Now, I did a little background check on Jalen Brunson. I didn't know he was a player of the year and here's my question. So Jalen Brunson won 2 national championships with Villanova.
Right.
And he was the player of the year in the NCAA. Okay. I think what's his name from Purdue is that again, he did it back-to-back years.
That would be Zach Edey, right?
Okay, but here's the thing. You're talking about the player of the year.
Right.
But why wasn't he picked in the first round? He was a second round draft pick.
Right. I mean, it was mainly because of how strong the 2018 NBA draft was. I mean, that draft is going to be looked at in a few years as one of like the best in recent memory.
Who was in that draft?
That draft featured Luka Doncic, Trae Young, guys like Jaren Jackson, guys like there was a lot, and Trae Young mentioned him. Luka Doncic obviously mentioned him. I'll actually look at that draft class real quick. That was probably the last most recent stacked NBA draft class in the last few years. I mean,
but he stepped up his game, Brock.
Right.
He's playing like at an all-star level now, right?
Right. Like even then, like I was like, I didn't like the Mavs letting him walk. I mean, but even then, it's shown that he can be like the top guy on another team with the Knicks, like, especially in a market like New York where you're under a microscope by a lot of fans there. He has found a way to just shine under the bright lights there. He has succeeded a ton, and he should be in the MVP conversation this year.
Who will be the MVP? Will it be what's his name for Denver again?
It's probably gonna be Nikola Jokic again. I mean, that's I think there's definitely a case for guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson too. Because if you could argue
Giannis,
right, him as well. But you can argue that Brunson is like the most valuable player to like mainly in the Eastern Conference and like a conference like that. He's one of the most valuable players in all of basketball because the Knicks without him have not they were not really that good. But even with him as the top guy, they've just exceeded every single expectation of theirs.
And then one guy, what's his name? Vincent, the guard for Knicks, the other guy.
Dante DiVincenzo.
Didn't he play for Villanova
He
too?
did. He was Brunson's college teammate when they won it all.
So that probably helps the cohesion of the team, right?
Right. He has been lights out shooting this season too.
Brock, I'm gonna basically disagree with you on something. I don't think the Knicks are ready to play the Celtics.
Right.
I think the Celtics are gonna push in and go to Eastern Conference. They're gonna go to the NBA Finals. I'm not saying they're gonna win it all, but I think they're gonna push in.
You gotta be bold with these kind of predictions because, like, even then, with the Celtics, I mean, you would think that with a roster like this every single year with Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum, a lot of guys, or not Jalen Brunson, Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, with a roster like that built around those two kind of guys, you would expect them to have won like a finals by now, or at least like
Well, they went to the finals
they
2
went to
years
the
ago,
finals 2 years ago, lost to the Warriors. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, lost to the 8 seed
but that's
Heat.
without Porzingis, right?
Right, that was without Porzingis. That Porzingis has been really good for the Celtics this year. This is probably the best roster they've had in years. It's championship or bust for them. It would be a massive disappointment for them to not win it all this year.
Do you think? Hey, what happened to Milwaukee?
Oh, it was. I don't like. I have never seen a collapse that big as much as like the Bucks have had this season. Like even then, like they fired Adrian Griffin in January. I mean that was the right call at the time, but even then, you can't really just place that as the reason they collapsed. They've just been super inconsistent. They were at like I saw a stat the other day about their wins. It was like they had let's see I can't find the exact stat, but they were like on like a hold on, it was like so they were 30-13 when they fired Adrian Griffin. The Bucks ended up finishing 49 and wait, no, did they finish 49-33? They finished let me look. Right, they ended up finishing 49-33. So that means they went 19-20 after they fired Griffin and replaced him with Doc Rivers. So just a horrible
Doc Rivers
collapse.
did nothing, huh?
He didn't like they could have done much better. I mean, obviously the coaching market, like with fired coaches, isn't really too big, but even then, why replace him with Doc Rivers? He's notoriously one of like the least clutch coaches in NBA history, which is why I expect the Bucks either lose in round one or round two.
Some people were even saying that the Indiana Pacers going to beat them in the first round.
I think it's possible. It's like the Pacers they have like Tyrese Halliburton, and they have a pretty solid roster too. I think if I were to pick an upset in the first round, I would pick that series.
Wow, what a choke! They just won the NBA championship a couple years ago.
Right, 2 years or 3 years ago, they were just NBA champions. But who knows? I mean, they have Giannis, they have Damian Lillard. That's already like two superstars in their primes. And even then, when you have Giannis, it's like there's like a effect when it comes to like top guys in the NBA. When you have a certain player in your team like Giannis, you're always going to contend, but you got to like get a good roster around him. I mean, they have like the Bucks have too good of a roster this season to just like utterly collapse like the way they did. That's the crazy thing.
So, what other teams, Brock, could potentially sneak in? Can the Lakers go all the way to the finals, or no? They're
I
done.
don't think so. No, I mean, not as long as Darvin Ham is the coach. He has been
But their top
hey,
four guys are great for Lakers, right?
right. They've had like the thing is
They're streaky, huh?
they have a good roster, but they're just like another inconsistent team, and they're mainly plagued by Darvin Ham's coaching decisions. Like players are even ignoring him during timeouts, during substitutions. It's the Darvin Ham experience in LA has been a complete failure. He is not a good coach. And I think the next time the Lakers will contend is when they fire him this offseason.
So that's like if like a coach like Steve Kerr was the coach of they would win 50 games, right?
Right.
Hey, did Golden State make the playoffs?
They're in the play-in tournament.
The playing tournament. So how does it work? It's the eighth, the ninth, 10th, and 11th seed.
Right. So the play-in schedule right now, it's the Lakers against the Pelicans, the Warriors against the Kings. If like so the winner of those two games will they will play for who gets the higher seed between those two, and the loser of those two games, it's an elimination game. You lose and you're out.
So what are okay? So the teams that in the West that could win, I'm going to say this: I can't see Golden. I mean, yeah, I don't see Golden State. I think Golden State is done
Right.
as a national.
It's
I mean,
just
as a
not
power.
like the roster is just not really anything too special. I mean,
Curry's
obviously
still
you
good.
still have Stephen Curry, but even then, this roster around him is certainly not the same roster as it was during the dynasty era. Like not even close. Like it's just not really that good of a roster.
So in the West, the teams to beat is really the Denver Nuggets again.
Right. Obviously it's the Nuggets. I mean, obviously you got like teams like the Thunder.
Could the
Those
Thunder sneaky go all the way to finals?
I mean, it's kind of tough to even tell because I mean that team is good, but they're inexperienced. They're a young team. Even then, they have too good of a record to just like bomb out like that. So who knows how that's going to happen? And then we have like also in the West, we have the Suns versus the Timberwolves. We have the obviously my Mavs against the Clippers once again. We have those are going on right now. I think Mavs Clippers is going to be the best series in the Western Conference playoffs.
Clippers kind of got their game together, huh?
Right. They looked a little streaky and inconsistent when they got James Harden earlier this season, but they've just turned it on. It's like that roster is they when all of them are playing at their best, that roster is very when all of them are healthy playing at their best, that team is not really going to be easy to beat.
What I heard is that Westbrook finally embraced being a bench player.
Right.
And that really was a pivotal thing because he's not scoring and obviously not getting his triple doubles like he used to, but he still has a lot of energy.
Right. That's why he's been able to succeed a lot more with the Clippers than he was with, like the Lakers, Wizards, all those kind of teams because like he's embraced like being like a top team guy and like and just for that he's been really good for that team. So I mean, that's going on there, but I think even as a biased Mavs fan, I still think there's a shot they can beat the Clippers. I mean, this is obviously not the same roster as it was during the 2020 playoffs, 2021 playoffs last time we met the Clippers. So I mean, obviously you got Luca, Kyrie, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. This is a really good team compared to the last few years.
I think that the Mavericks need one more player. They
Who
need one more superstar.
It's a possibility this offseason, but even then, this roster is still very good as it is right now. And like
But to go to the finals,
to
though,
go to the finals, obviously, who knows? Because we've
they
seen
have to
like
go get really hot.
right, we've seen teams worse than that. Like when you look at like teams like the Heat last year, you just have like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, but that team was an 8 seed for a reason, but they just turned it on as soon as the playoffs started. They went to the finals because of it.
So with that, Oklahoma City could potentially just ride this talent all the way to the finals.
That's a
Wouldn't that be
possibility.
interesting to see that
It,
happen?
it'd be very interesting
A
to see
young
it.
team like that, they might get swept in the first round. I mean, in the finals, but no, if they go all the way, they have to go through a lot of teams.
Right, they will have to run a gigantic gauntlet during the Western Conference, obviously, because they would have to face if they win their series round one, they'd have to face the winner of Mavs Clippers, and then potentially they'd have to meet the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. So that's gonna be a total gauntlet to run. But even then, who knows? They can very well possibly do it.
I'm going to make a statement about two players, well, three players tonight that you might not agree, but I'm going to say, what I think about it. I think Jalen Brunson is a I'm saying to be the most valuable player in the league. He's the most valuable player for that team by far.
Right.
Like he just stepped up his game so majorly from when the time he's on the Mavericks to now.
Right. When you look at players like the two players I can specifically single it down to when it comes to valuability for their teams as a whole would be Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic. We've seen how both of those teams look without those players, and those players just change the whole team dynamic around them.
So I'm going to say that Jalen Brunson should be in the MVP discussion.
I agree.
Now, I'm going to say this, that Chet Holmgren is a primary factor for the Thunder winning 57 games. I'm not saying that's the only factor, but to go from 40 wins to 57 wins with primarily the same lineup except Chet Holmgren. That's the difference. That guy's skilled. He's a skilled player. And I think put a little bit of meat on him to get what's his name, Jokic for Denver. They
Right.
told him you're too skinny, right? But you gotta admit for a rookie, 21-year-old rookie, he did amazing. He'd be the rookie of the year if it wasn't for what's his name for
If it weren't for Wembanyama being like
yeah.
he is a generational talent, but we'll get more on that soon.
No, I think Chet Holmgren will one day be a 20-point scorer in the league, average 10 rebounds and 3 or 4 blocks a game. And the guy can dribble and he can shoot. I mean, he's your prototypical player this generation. I think the only thing I'm worried about is just he's so thin. Is he gonna have injuries and coming up? Because a lot of wear and tear in the league.
Right.
But now I'm going to make the controversial statement. I've given this a lot of thought over the years. I think one of the most overrated players in the history of the NBA, stat inflation, got triple doubles like crazy, but shot 30% from the floor. It was Westbrook for the Clippers. He had a lot of talent. I respect the fact that he went from a guy being kind of defensive player at UCLA to being a guy that won the NBA scoring title a couple times, triple double. But I'm going to tell you something. My personal view, and I've been following basketball since the 70s, Brock. He would have been a more valuable player to the Heat and to whatever team he played if he would just increased his, like, instead of getting triple doubles, which are great, but averaging 5% more from the floor and your 3-pointers. I think Kevin Durant, personally, was just tired of his shot selection. That was a factor. I'm not saying it was the only factor that caused him to get out of Oklahoma City, but he just needed to shoot better from the floor, Brock. He's averaging 30% from the floor. Hey, Brock, look at your stats. Let's look at read off for the last 10 years, how he's shot from the floor and what is his career average from the floor. Hey, Brock, to be a guard in the NBA, you should at least be able to shoot 35% from the 3-point line, right?
Right. So here we go. So his yearly field goal percentage has been in the higher 40 percentage. He's shot like this season 45%, last season 48%.
Not 3-pointer.
Oh, this is field goal percentage.
Field goal. I'm saying 3-point.
3-point percentage. That would be let me look at that one. That would be all right. 3-point percentage. Here we are. So he shot 27% this year, 35% last year, 29% both in 2021 and in 2022, 31% in Washington that one season, 25% in
25%,
2019, 2018, 29%, 2017, 29%, 2016, 34%, 2015, 29%, and 2014, 29%. So that's the last 10 years.
So Brock, that's not getting it done in the NBA.
Right. In today's NBA, not so much.
So here's what I'm arguing. One thing I liked about Kobe Bryant, there's a lot of things about Kobe, things of generational talent. But Kobe Bryant had all the talent in the world. But there's a lot of talented guys that come into the league. Okay? But he was just driven. There's never been a more driven player than Kobe Bryant. And one thing about Kobe I thought was really good, Brock, was that he always would add something new in the offseason. He would get I remember one year he hired Hakeem Olajuwon to teach him how to do that fade, that turnaround fade shot, like, like a fadeaway jumper thing that he had, you know? And I just think that Westbrook, wow, if you're shooting 25% from the floor, Brock, don't you like try in the offseason to kind of increase that by get a few percentage every year, try to get it better, Brock? Instead of a triple, I'm saying, look, you don't need your guard to do a triple double. Now, Jokic getting triple double, that's a legitimate triple double. Like just because I'm going to say there was stat inflation and irrelevant. If you can't, if you can't consistently hit 35% from the floor as a guard in today's NBA, you are shooting your team in the foot, Brock. What do you think?
I would say with today's NBA, there's a higher emphasis on three pointers, especially when you look at guys like Stephen Curry. Like he mainly revolutionized that whole thing where like most games nowadays are like you wonder why there's so many high scoring games in the 120s, 130s. That's been a higher average this year than any other year in previous years. And it's mainly because of three pointers and the emphasis on shooting from the outside.
So, Brock, as we segue, I have a question
All right.
for you. There's a lot of injuries in baseball. There's a lot of talk that pitchers, the spin rate and stuff.
Right. I
What's
would
going on? Why are there so many injuries of pitchers today in professional baseball?
So first, I'll list off the current MLB injured pitchers that we've just heard
The
out the
Atlanta
past.
Braves guy, the
Right.
Cy Young winner.
We have, let's see, obviously Garrett Cole. We have Spencer Strider. We have let me look at this. Here's injury status for the 2024 season. Um, let's see, team injuries. We have Eduardo Rodriguez for the Diamondbacks. He's suffered an injury. We have Spencer Strider. He's out until next year. He tore his like UCL on his right elbow. We have obviously we have Kyle Bradish, Sean Means in Baltimore. And there's just so many injuries going on just all around the league with with mainly pitchers. Like it's most people are quick to blame like the pitch clock and all the new innovation of that from last season. I mean, that's like the pitch clock has hurt like a lot of like pitcher like I don't know how to describe it. It's mainly hurt like pitcher like their whole like
Rhythm.
rhythm exactly. Like before the pitch clock, yeah, like a lot of like players like having to like take their time on the mound and whatnot to get the pitch off. And nowadays you're in a hurry to get the pitch off, and by when you're doing that, it hurts like the doing it for every game you start in. It hurts like arm strength and all of that. And like, but even then, it's not even just the pitch clock. It's mainly like different development style of different teams. Like teams like the Tampa Bay Rays and the Marlins, those teams like they have a high emphasis on throwing like 100 miles per hour, all that. They run out those pitchers every single week, especially relief pitchers. They run out those kind of guys a lot. They run them to the ground in spring training and in actual games. And that's why they leave the league in like Tommy John surgeries. Like we've just heard that like guys like Edward Cabrera and the Marlins, Yuri Perez and the Marlins. You hear every year about how a Rays pitcher like Tyler Glasnow back when he played there, you had Shane McClanahan. He had like Tommy John surgery. It's mainly because their idea of like pitching development is running out guys until their arms fall off. And like a lot of MLB teams nowadays have taken that kind of like stance on developing their pitchers, and it's hurt like pitchers in the long run.
So, Brock, what's this whole thing about the spin rate?
So with spin rate nowadays, it's like a lot of so I'll pull up a stat that how like it had like here's a spin rate stat from that. It was let's see. So a lot of teams have had a lot more like emphasis on velocity and spin rate and miles per hour for every pitch. And like the whole like in today's era of baseball, a lot of teams want to make sure their pitchers can throw like 90 to 100 miles per hour. They want to do it like consistently. Now, when like obviously seeing like below 90 miles per hour, that's usually a pitch that gets hit. But like in today's era of the MLB, they want like 95 to 100 every single pitch because they believe that's what puts batters down and gets them to strike out more and all of that. And doing that has hurt a lot of pitchers, like their arms in general. Like obviously, you just saw Spencer Strider. He like he's like in previous years he's thrown for a pretty high velocity, but he's out like for the rest of the season now because of that. I mean, you have like obviously Garrett Cole didn't get injured from that, but even then he's been a hard thrower in recent years. You have like mainly guys like the Marlins and Rays, like I said, they have like very hard throwers on those teams, and those teams lead the league in like surgeries for pitchers. So it's like a main thing of like player development. It's more on that than like just the pitch clock.
So Brock, as we wind down, you got some other things you wanted to talk about real quick?
I sure do. So I'll do a quick I'll do a quick like minute or whatever of like the NHL playoffs and
Okay,
the
yeah,
and
that's
then
fine.
the so with the NHL playoffs, we have like a lot of clinching scenarios going on tonight. Obviously, the tonight's clinching scenarios is so Capitals can get in with a win tonight. Red Wings are eliminated with a they're eliminated with a Capitals win tonight, I believe. The Penguins are both the Penguins and the Red Wings and the Flyers. All three of those teams pretty much just hang on for dear life to try and reclaim the last spot in the Eastern Conference. And then we have like different teams around the league, their chances to win the cup. It's like this is like I would say this is a lot more balanced than last season was, even though there were a lot of upsets last year. But I think like obviously, you have the Rangers win the President's Trophy. I believe that team can go all the way. I mean, you look every year. I know it's the President's Trophy curse, where like a team, whatever team wins it, the team that has won it hasn't won the Stanley Cup since 2013 when the Blackhawks did it. But even then, I believe this Rangers team has like they have all the talent to go all the way. I mean, they have really good goaltending from Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick, a really good offense, solid power play unit. But even then, there's like a lot of upset candidates every single year. This year, like last year, you had like the Panthers upsetting the Bruins in round one. That was a historic upset. And even in the Western Conference, it's pretty much anyone's game in the Western Conference. I mean, the Stars have a huge chance of going all the way. Like they have a better team. They have a really solid like team. They've got really good contributions from their young players this season. So that's going on with that. But even then, the NHL playoffs right now are very unpredictable. That's true. And then we have on the other side, we have the WNBA draft last night. We saw Caitlin Clark get drafted first overall to the Indiana Fever. And we saw like Camille Cardoso from South Carolina and Angel Reese from LSU get drafted to the Chicago Sky, and then Cameron Brink drafted to the Los Angeles Sparks. So, I mean, I think this is like the best draft class WNBA has had in like forever. A lot of people are even comparing this to, like the NBA's 2003 draft class.
Can Caitlin Clark repeat her success in the WNBA, or will it take her a year or two to get it going?
I believe she can very well repeat her success. I mean, she's like, I mean, a lot of like, obviously, you have like really good players even in college that succeed in the WNBA. But yeah, like Maya Moore, she's really good at Connecticut. You got like Diana Taurasi back in her day. She was very good. But like even then, I still think Caitlin Clark is going to replicate like her Iowa numbers in the WNBA. Like obviously, she probably won't average like 50 points a game or whatever, but she'll still be like she'll still probably be the best player in the league from the jump. I
She'll
believe
probably
so.
average at least 20 points a game this year, right?
Right.
So Brock, as we close tonight, what's your final take? What anything you want to talk about before we close out tonight?
I mean, we got the NFL draft next week. That's gonna be really fun.
Give me the top five players. Will Marvin Harrison Jr. be in the top five?
Yeah, absolutely will. I'm gonna say pick number one, Chicago Bears take Caleb Williams. Number two, Commanders take Jaden Daniels. Three, the Patriots take Drake May. Four, the Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr. And five, the Chargers take Roma Dunze. Oh, did I get those
Where's
picks
JJ
right?
McCarthy going?
I believe he will go to let me see, because it's we've heard like a lot about him recently from a lot of teams having on different visits and all that. But even then, I could see him at this point going number six to the Giants. They have like an emphasis on drafting a quarterback.
Man, I think it's a mistake. I'm just not sold on.
I
Look, I
personally
love Michigan
right.
Wolverines, but I'm just telling you, I've seen Michigan. It's my love of the University of Michigan and my watching JJ McCarthy play all these years, or last 3 years for the Wolverines. I don't see him even being really a first round draft pick.
I really like my take on him is I don't think he should be picked that high, like not at all. Like he doesn't really have like the kind of traits to separate himself from any
A
other
deep ball, he
quarterback.
didn't throw a deep ball. He's
Right.
never look, if you're going to be a quarterback, look, say what you want about Caleb Williams. that dude was passing every down. Like, and he's like,
Right.
I mean, if you remember that one game where in the Super Bowl where Tom Brady threw for 400 yards and
Right.
they still lost.
2018.
No, he threw for 500
He threw
yards
for 505 yards that game.
and they still lost.
Right.
Right. That was the bonehead coaching decision of all time where you take your primary defensive back and you bench him for some kind of personal squabble. That's
Right.
when Malcolm Butler got benched
Right.
for something that had nothing to do with football. A lot of people are down on it. They probably would have won that Super Bowl that year, right?
Right.
Um, but the point is, I just don't think JJ. You know what? At best, he'll be a guy like
Alex Smith.
Alex Smith, not Alex Jones, the crazy guy announcer. But well, folks, as we wind down, this has been the Lee Enoch Show. Over the last 4 semesters, Brock and I have talked about a lot of controversial issues, a lot of sports, probably a lot more sports than a lot of people thought. Okay, because I'm really into politics, but I also love sports. Um, we've had guests like Walter Block, all kind of different pastors came on here, like Brent Christian, who just became the rector at St. Andrew's Reformed St. Andrew's Anglican Church in downtown Fort Worth. We've had KC Lopez from that same church. We've had Reverend Seth Snyder, an up and coming theologian that Brock, just like in sports, we say up and coming player. Seth Snyder is one of those guys. I think he's going to make a major impact in Christianity, especially in the Anglican Church. We've had a lot of guys over the last, and we had Allison that was our guest host
Yeah.
last year. We want to thank every single guest that's ever came on this show. Thanks to the listeners. Thanks to people like Ethan and Dan here at the station for getting things together. I wanted to give a shout out as we close tonight to my friend Adam Groza, Dr. Adam Groza of Gateway Seminary. I've known this brother, this faithful brother, for 14 years. No, more than that, close to 20 years now. But he served that is 14 years as a vice president of Gateway Seminary in California. It was just announced that he is now the new president of Gateway Seminary. Congratulations to him and his wife, his family. My prayers are with him. Brock, I want to thank you once again for
sure.
being a
Appreciate
faithful
it.
guest host.
Thanks for having me
I'll
on.
be looking to see what you're going to be doing here on the podcast next year. This has been Lee Enochs, and
Brock Bergen.
this has been the Lee Enoch Show signing out. Have a great night.